Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today it is Short Story Tuesday, so I wanted to focus on another interesting short story that I have found in the wilds. I am referring to a short story that is about Indigenous Americans and amusement parks. I am referring to Amusements by Sherman Alexie from his short story collection, The Lone Ranger and Tonto Fist Fight in Heaven. Here is them fist fighting. And this was written and published in 1993. For those who don't know, Sherman Alexie is an Indigenous American author. He actually draws his Native American heritage from multiple tribes, including the Coeur d'Alene, which is in eastern Washington, northern Idaho. His mother was Choctaw. He grew up on the Spokane Native reservation, which I'm very familiar with. I used to live in Washington, so I know where Spokane and all of that is. He's written a number of books as well as poetry and short stories like the one that I am talking about today. And he's won a number of awards for his work, and he's even had awards named after him. However, he became persona non grata after he was accused of sexual harassment around the time of the Me Too movement. And he even owned up and apologized to all of that. But the award that was named after him was renamed because sexual harassment is not cool. That's an unfortunate thing about him. But I feel that because he's owned up to it and whatnot, it's fine to talk about his work as long as we acknowledge, authors' flaws and whatnot. So without further ado, let's talk about Amusements. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So Amusements focuses on Victor and Sadie, two Indigenous individuals who are at the carnival midway with their friend or cousin, Dirty Joe. Dirty Joe has been drinking. He might be a drunk. He's currently passed out, and Victor and Sadie are trying to figure out what to do with him. Sadie wants to just leave him there, passed out in Midway, but Victor suspects that something bad will happen to him. Either the crowd will gawk at him and whatnot, or the police will throw him in the drunk tank, and you don't want another Indigenous individual in jail when they don't have to be. But they end up deciding to just place him on the roller coaster. They get the roller coaster operator to let him ride throughout the rest of the afternoon. And Sadie thinks it's a bit mean, but they end up deciding to do it anyway. And they have a good laugh as Joe is just flopping around while drunk on the roller coaster, but unfortunately a group of other people join in on the laughter that Victor doesn't really like that. And so, like this crowd forms, and a bunch of children, make the stereotypical Indian noises with their mouths, and this draws a crowd of security or police officers. And they question the roller coaster operator about why all of this is going on. And the roller coaster operator points at Victor. Sadie has long left at this point, but Victor finds himself pursued by these officers, and he runs into the funhouse, managing to shake the police officers a little bit. But as he's running, and as the story comes to a close, he sees his body and form change shape in the crazy mirror part of it, and he reflects on this sort of oddities, amusements of the past, and how natives have been used at at carnivals in order to draw crowds and be gawked at in the past. And so that's about where the story ends there. I actually think the word I'm looking for is freak show, but in terms of analysis, there is a little bit we're talking about with amusements. One of the ideas that Alexie is writing about here is that of the sideshow and Indigenous history, as well as the idea of the freak show, of what you can do to draw like crowds and make money at a carnival. And this requires you to understand a bit of Indigenous history, especially in carnivals. He points it out later in this story, but he notes that, or like Alexie is trying to raise awareness of that history, where either Indigenous individuals were either forced by white people, often with power, into carnival sideshows as a way to get money for those sideshows, and say, hey, look at this Native American here. Aren't their ways quaint and strange and worthy of ridicule and whatnot? It's sort of being part of the freak show, even though there's nothing remotely unusual about a Native American or something like that. But there's that history. Sometimes they were forced. Sometimes they sold family members into the sideshow without completely understanding what they were doing, because there was that language divide. But there is a history of Native Americans being used and exploited in this way. And so you see that in the story, with Victor kind of split on leaving his sort of loser cousin, Dirty Joe, to fend for himself at the carnival. Sadie certainly wants that, or to save him from the crowd. If he leaves him at the carnival, like, somebody's going to find and try to exploit him, maybe even harm him, as there's a history of violence towards natives in this country, which is a bit of an understatement. Or he could choose to save him from the crowd, which would inconvenience him because his friends passed out and he'd have to carry him home, and there's a bit of embarrassment and shame from being around a drunk Indigenous person, maybe worried about falling into that stereotype or something like that. So there's that desire to save him or leave him that I don't think ever fully gets answered here, but it's certainly what is on Victor's mind. But Alexie brings up the funhouse in this story, the crazy mirrors, as a sort of reminder of that history of what has happened to Indigenous individuals at the carnival. There's a good quote that I would like to read to you from this. Crazy mirrors, I thought, the kind that distort your features, make you fatter, thinner, taller, shorter. The kind that make a white man remember he's the master of ceremonies, barking about the fat lady, the dog-faced boy, the Indian who offered up another Indian like some treaty. And that's a good quote, because it shows like everything's being distorted, but it reminds you of what was once the case once upon a time, and might still be the case now, that Indians have kind of like been exploited, but there's also been a shared sort of or like they've had a part in the exploitation too. Maybe not exactly knowing what they were getting into, but it has been a thing that happened. Alexie also seems to be talking about anti-native sentiment in this story. Again, a bit of an understatement that natives haven't been treated well in this country, but you see that present in this story, with crowds gawking at the natives, laughing at Dirty Joe, and the children making racist, stereotypical Indian noises, and even doing finger guns at Victor and Sadie and saying, "Bang, you're dead," indicating that it draws comparisons like cowboys and Indians, and how Indians are viewed as lesser and therefore worthy of being targets in that kind of way, that they're seen as the bad guys, even though historically they were not exactly trying to hurt people or harm them in the same way that the United States did to them. But what's also interesting there is how the crowd is mostly adults, and so they should know better, and you'd hope that the next generation would know better. But the children are making these noises, indicating that hate, that anti-Indian sentiment is being passed down to the next generation, which is not good. Even I when I was a child, my parents encouraged cowboys and Indians, and I'm a little ashamed to say I played a part in that, but I have gotten wiser as I gotten older, and I certainly hope that the younger generations aren't being taught that these days, and how unfortunately racist that can be. And then like another element of this story that's sort of that gets at that anti-Indian sentiment, anti-Native sentiment, is that the police or the security guard calls Victor chief. He's certainly not a chief, but that's probably like the stereotypical greeting that you give to an Indigenous person that you see if you're not particularly creative or anything like that. So Victor probably has to deal with that on a consistent basis whenever he's around white people, which is not good. But Alexie is showing that the hate of the past centuries, the genocide, for being forced onto reservations, being exploited at the amusement park, it continues in the present, that it hasn't really gone away. It's just taken on a different form. And although people aren't actively trying to kill natives in this present day, there's still that anti-Indian sentiment that goes on that makes, natives feel less than, that makes them feel like second-class citizens or even third-class citizens in this country. And there's a need for solidarity, which I think is what Alexie is getting at. You very well could leave your embarrassing friend, at the carnival by himself. But what's going to happen to him that could easily happen to you, and you need to work together and be united in order to, be able to fend off acts of aggression from the oppressor, which is, I think, what Alexie's main message is there. One other thing I'll note about this is that there is solid writing here on Alexie's part, particularly in his short story collection, but there's a number of other short stories in this that are really high quality writing, and I definitely need to reread some of them because I think there's a lot of depth to them and a lot more worth thinking about. So another good reason to really check out this collection here. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Amusements by Sherman Alexie. Definitely a solid short story from a solid short story collection, one that I'm going to recommend that you go seek out. I managed to find this at my local library. Don't forget to patronize your local libraries. But I'm probably definitely going to buy some of Alexie's work in the future, as I definitely want to check out more of his short stories, but I want to read some of his poetry and longer form novels as well, as they sound not mildly, but very intriguing in a lot of ways. So I definitely recommend you go seek this out if you have a chance. You might be pleasantly surprised by what you read. Otherwise, comment below if you have anything to say about my review or this story. Would love to hear from you and have a conversation. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people can find out about this author or the short story collection or the short story if they don't already know. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and amusement park travels. Farewell.